Stay with us. We're going to begin with that major shakeup at the FBI. Bureau Director Christopher Wray announcing he will resign before President-elect Trump takes office.
Wray was selected by Mr. Trump in 2017, but he's leaving before his 10-year term is up after Trump made it clear he wanted Wray out, picking loyalist Kash Patel to run the agency instead.
And in my view, this is the best way to avoid dragging the Bureau deeper into the fray while reinforcing the values and principles that are so important in how we do our work.
Mr. Trump has attacked the FBI and Justice Department for what he says have been partisan investigations and prosecutions against him. He recently criticized Wray personally for the director's role in the FBI's investigation into classified documents found at his Florida Mar-a-Lago estate. Beyond the DOJ, the president-elect continues to fill out his second administration with some controversial picks. He named former news anchor Kari Lake, who just lost a Senate race in Arizona, as the next director of the government-run media network Voice of America. We have team coverage of the Trump transition. In just a few minutes, we'll discuss those new appointments with NBC News White House correspondent Allie Raffa. But let's begin with NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Dilanian. So, Ken, this announcement means Christopher Wray, much like James Comey, will not serve out that full 10-year term. But the position of FBI director, it's not supposed to be like a cabinet post where each president gets to pick who runs the Bureau. Wray said he's doing this, in essence, to protect the Bureau's reputation and integrity. How does stepping aside do that? Walk us through his decision here.
Good morning, Joe and Savannah. Well, that's a debatable proposition. I'll tell you what the thinking was among Chris Wray and his team, according to my reporting, which is that, look, he had a stark choice in front of him. He could have forced Donald Trump to fire him in January when Donald Trump took office, or he could have bowed out the way he did and agreed to resign. And he thought that by agreeing to resign, he would spare the Bureau the trauma of a firing and perhaps spare them some more heated criticism, even though, as you point out, Donald Trump has already criticized Chris Wray, but much more heated criticism that might have come from a presidential firing. You know, just a couple of days ago, Senator Charles Grassley wrote a letter excoriating Wray and the Bureau and making all kinds of baseless charges, and they really wanted to avoid a similar kind of episode with Donald Trump. Whether that was the right move, historians will decide. There was certainly an argument to be made that this is such a norm-shattering event that Wray should have forced the president to fire him, to underscore the fact that this is the second FBI director now that Donald Trump has forced out short of his 10-year term, guys.
Ken, what's the reaction been like from the rank and file at the FBI?
There's a lot of concern. Look, Wray was a popular FBI director. He tried to, sort of sail the ship through the choppy waters of the past 7 or 8 years as the FBI was buffeted by criticism. There's certainly concern about the potential for Kash Patel as the FBI director.
Yeah, let's talk about Kash Patel. That is who the president-elect has already chosen to replace Wray. We know he has been a fierce critic of the Bureau, saying he would shut down the Hoover building. He's been meeting with senators recently. Is he meeting much resistance from Republicans at this point?
Not a lot, but it's hard to know exactly how senators are going to come down in the end. By the way, we have reporting that he's walked back his vow to shut down the Hoover building, although the Hoover building is crumbling and the FBI would love to move out of there. But look, Republican senators don't appear to be opposing Patel on the grounds that he's made some extraordinary statements about, for example, going after journalists or using the FBI to punish Donald Trump's enemies, or the fact that he has a list of 60 deep state figures in his book who are mainstream Washington figures who he says are sort of enemies. That's not the reason they're going to oppose him. There are deep concerns about the fact that he really lacks the qualifications of any previous FBI director. This is the premier law enforcement agency. But, there's so many other controversial Donald Trump nominees that it becomes a numbers game in the end. It remains to be seen whether a handful of Republicans are going to stop all of them, guys.
All right, Ken Dilanian, appreciate your reporting. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Well, President-elect Trump is running out his picks for his second administration.
As we mentioned last night, he said he wants his ally, former Arizona news anchor and former Senate candidate Kari Lake, to serve as the next director of the government-run international media network, Voice of America. In a post on Truth Social, Mr. Trump said Lake would, quote, ensure that the American values of freedom and liberty are broadcast around the world fairly and accurately, unlike the lies spread by the fake news media.
For more, let's bring in NBC News White House correspondent Allie Raffa. Allie, good to have you with us. So we just mentioned some of her background. News anchor. She ran 2 unsuccessful campaigns here. But what does her appointment potentially mean for Voice of America? What is its role around the world?
Yeah, guys, good morning. Well, as you mentioned, Voice of America is funded and run by the government. It has around 1,000 employees and a budget of over $350 million a year. It also broadcasts in 49 languages and reaches over 350 million people per week, according to its website. So this is a huge job with a lot of responsibility. And this pick particularly is getting a lot of attention because of some of the past positions and opinions that Kari Lake has had and adopted in recent years. Remember, she has positioned herself in recent years as a strong ally of President-elect Trump. She's also become a very fierce critic of the industry she had a decades-long career in, and she's adopted conspiracy theories specifically around election integrity and political interference, even using her denial of President Biden's victory in 2020 to fuel her failed 2022 gubernatorial campaign that, of course, as you mentioned, she lost and even tried to overturn the results for. So remember, this position also requires Senate confirmation, so it's very likely she's going to be questioned about some of those past positions and opinions when this does go to the confirmation process, guys.
Allie, the president-elect also announced several other names for roles in his administration, including a few of his major longtime donors. Talk about who they are.
Yeah, there was a flurry of announcements by President-elect Trump last night, and among them were these picks of several of his former donors to ambassadorships. One of them, Daniel Newland, who Trump says boasts a nearly 30-year career in law enforcement and as well as an injury law practice, to be ambassador to Colombia. He picked Peter Lamelas, a Cuban-American physician and businessman, as ambassador to Argentina. And he picked Leandro Rizzuto, a former Con Air executive and consul to Bermuda, for an ambassadorship to the Organization of American States, guys.
Allie, before we let you go, we do want to ask you about this breaking news. President Biden granting clemency to more than 1,000 people, the largest single-day act of clemency by a sitting president. What are the details?
Yeah, we've been expecting this to happen. The White House has been previewing it, but we didn't know exactly when it would actually happen. But the White House this morning is announcing that the president will commute sentences of almost 1,500 offenders and the pardonings of 39 others, marking the biggest number of commutations and pardons up until this point. And the White House says all of these offenders are, quote, nonviolent and have been placed on home confinement for at least a year, adding that they had shown, quote, successful rehabilitation and a strong commitment to making their communities safer. And the White House says that we should expect more of this to happen before the president leaves office in just 39 days, guys.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.